Before any living thing breathed into the void, there was a scene that humans could not see, a place where light not only shone, but also lived, beating with sounds that can't be put into known chords. On this stage in the sky, one being stood out with a brightness that words can't explain. He wasn't just one of millions. He was so important that his presence seemed to change the surroundings of the holy throne itself. But who was this being that was so close to God, that God's glory shone off of him like liquid fire? Why would someone who was so much higher than all the other angels become the most evil and rebellious thing in the world? The answers are shocking. He was Lucifer, the bearer of light, made in an unmatched state of beauty, and his strong desire to be worshipped was what caused the biggest fall in the history of the world. Before time had a name, heaven was filled with the unity of many heavenly beings. Only one of them had the presence of God directly. He didn't have to sing in the crowd because he was right next to the chair. He had a look that was both beautiful and authoritative. 9 valuable stones, a sardius, a topaz, a diamond, a beryl, an onyx, a jasper, a sapphire, an emerald, and a carbuncle, gleamed on his body. They all showed different parts of God's glory like live flames. This mixture was more than just a pretty look. It showed his role and duty in the higher government. Lucifer not only gave off light, but also power. He was given the job of leading worship in heaven. Millions of angels sang in perfect harmony with his voice, which was the most beautiful sound ever made. Others brought messages or watched over holy places, but he was in charge and made the songs that rang through time and space. He was the covering angel, and his job was to watch over God's throne. There wasn't a more private or important event than this one. But it was right here, so close to great glory, that something dangerous began to grow. Lucifer started to understand how other people felt about his beauty and skills. Just because he was so perfect, he felt a small pull to both lead worship and receive it. At first, he couldn't feel this desire, but it grew inside him like a secret seed until it became a burning fire. What had been an honor turned into something to be proud of and strive for. Picture the scene for a second. There is a single being standing in front of the endless throne, and millions of angels are singing from far away in heaven. He is not only a mirror of light, but also of power. He was the only one who was close to God. There was no other angel who knew the beauty of holiness so well. He had a thought he had never had before. What if I were more important than my Creator? This uniqueness should have made him humble. This thought, which hadn't been put into words yet, was the start of the fall of the universe. Even though there was no sun, stars, or planets yet, the first uprising was already starting. Without the first star being lit or the world taking shape, an angel had the desire to take the place of the Most High. Lucifer, who was made to show the glory of God, started to want it for himself. At that moment, the light bearer started to change into what would become known as Satan, the enemy, or the one who accuses. His job was one of a kind. God made tens of thousands or even millions of angels, and each one had a specific job to do. Some were messengers, some were fighters, and some were holy place guards. It was his job to protect the throne and the Almighty, though, because that was the job that was closest to God's heart. Nothing was as good as this setting, but his pride took away from the original purpose of this quest. Not only was the air in heaven beautiful, it was also perfect. There was no sign of a problem until the first distortion started to form inside one of them. It got to the point where this being who was meant to carry God's glory wanted to be the source of that glory. Taking a gift and making it your own throne is what the fall is all about. The angel on top, who was made to serve, now wanted to be served. The other angels were amazed when they saw him. He was beautiful, strong, had a great voice, and was in charge. A lot of people couldn't even look at his beautiful body directly. Each of the 9 stones that covered him had reflections that looked like they showed divine traits. Topaz shone like gold, diamond sparkled like pure light, and sardius burned like fire. But something dark was growing behind this look. The next time Isaiah wrote about this being, Isaiah 14:12, he used the picture of a bright star falling from the sky to describe how he fell. This picture isn't just beautiful, it shows the spiritual state of someone who had everything but chose to reject the giver. He was perfect in every way until sin was found in him, as Ezekiel 28:14-15 says about him. The sadness of that moment is echoed in the Bible, beauty ruined by his own choice. There had never been a scene like this before. There was a fall of an angel in heaven before there was any tempting of a person on earth. Not just any angel, but the tallest, closest, and most beautiful one. He did not start his rebellion with cries, but with a thought, a secret wish, and a pride that grew in quiet. Think about it. A being who could see all of God's glory, walked on fire-filled stones, and directly heard God's word, started to dream of having his own throne. What makes his story so powerful is this difference. He turned into the image of evil, even though he was meant to reflect light. This is the story of the angel who watched over the throne before he was called Satan, the snake or the enemy. A being made to lead prayer who got too proud and lost himself. A story that's not just about a spiritual being that lives far away, but also about how dangerous it is to use gifts as gods. Lucifer, the angel of light, turned into a sign of the fall because he wanted to be worshipped more than the God who made him. Before we go on, if you liked today's story, please subscribe to our channel here and say Amen in the comments. You can also help this message reach more people by giving this video a like. They need to remember that God's word is still alive, even when things look dark. Also, please leave a super thank you if you want to help this job. We can keep telling more Bible stories and spreading this message of faith and hope thanks to your gift. Thank you so much for your help. We'll keep going on our journey today. What goes on in the soul of a perfect but not supreme being? What's the point of being close to perfect greatness but never quite there? There was a being in heaven who seemed to touch the divine with his wings. There was no time there, and praise was always going on. The sky went silent every time his voice echoed. It wasn't just music. The sound seemed to have a life. People said that his songs cut through the unseen and stuck in the darkest parts of their being. It wasn't just music, it was soul. Lucifer did more than just sing. He made feelings change, so much happiness it hurt, and so much peace that it made the spirit float. The sound of his praise made the other angels give up their work. It made sense. His body sparkled with 9 stones that can't be found anywhere else on earth. It looked like every spark of the Most High was reflecting in his shape. The throne's light was caught and sent back in colors that didn't belong to the rainbow. His wings were made of a steady, quiet fire that didn't burn but cleaned. The light seemed to follow him everywhere, like a live mirror of God's presence. There was nothing bad about him at all. There was nothing wrong. There is no mistake or flaw. It was like God had made him to be the highest point that the world could reach. But that limit was starting to fall. Before, perfection was a good thing, but now it was poison. It took Lucifer a long time to notice the looks, but he did. The hand signals, the respectful quiet. He saw that people bowed when they saw him, how they praised him by whispering his name. Even Michael, who was very brave, made room for him when he came up. The seed was put down. It wasn't someone else's fault. It wasn't praise from other people that led to the fall. It was a spark inside, a thought, a what if. He had everything. Beautiful that shone, power that was strong, music that held my attention, but he used everything to praise someone else, to help someone else. Even though he was the best servant, he was still a servant. In the stillness of his heart, the pain of order spoke to him. Why worship him if you can worship him? Think about it. You are the devil. Take a look. A lot of angels are watching over you. They copy what you do. Some people change the way they speak to sound like you. Others make their clothes look better to match your intelligence. Everyone knows, everybody knows, you're the unique one. That which can't be beat. The morning star, the most popular. Then you look up. He is right there, still above, always on top, not touchable, not possible. You will never be him, no matter how bright you are, how strong you are, or how much joy you bring to people. Never. This unseen wall between the Creator and the made things started to get too much to bear. Lucifer started to want the throne, but he wasn't brave enough to say it, not even to himself. How could a made thing want to be equal to the eternal one after all? But once a thought comes into being, it grows. They get bigger over time. They start to take shape. They like it when there is silence. He didn't say anything. From the outside, he was still getting the most praise. He still bowed. He sang still. On the inside, though, they were no longer worshipping God. It was his. He thought about himself as he looked at the valuable stones. He began to think that the glory it showed was his. The people who liked him praised him so much that it sounded like a chorus. As this idea grew, he felt more and more empty, since there was no answer. There were no cheers, there was no chair, just service. It wasn't a quick fall, it was a process. It's slow, dangerous, and deadly. He stayed stunningly beautiful and bright, but the inside of him was already different. The flames on his wings were no longer holy, but angry at not being in charge. The sound of his voice was no longer meant to shake the sky, but to rule hearts. Worship changed from a way to get things to a mirror. Where there used to be humility, there was now pride. And things began to change in the sky. It wasn't because God had changed, but because a heart that is unruly changes the world around it. People who were close to him started to feel it. There was a problem. The notes didn't sound right together. There is a small problem with the balance, but no one was brave enough to talk to him. I mean, it was Lucifer after all, the person picked, the most beautiful child in heaven. God sees everything, so he knew the end from the start. But he also knew how things worked. He knew the exact moment that the person who used to guard the throne was found to be guilty. He then waited, because everyone is tried, even angels. There is freedom, even in heaven. If you can choose not to love, then love is love. He picked Lucifer. He made his choice in the quiet of his mind. The choice was still a secret, but it was already having real affects. Heaven hadn't seen the revolt yet, but it could feel its shadow coming together already, like a storm that starts off in the distance and soon covers the whole sky. It was the second fall, the fall inside, the one that comes before all the others. He was already down before he was thrown out. He had already judged himself before he was judged, because there is no throne strong enough to hold pride, and no heart is pure enough to want to be honored instead of God. He always felt like there was the same amount of space between him and the seat. There was always someone higher than him, no matter how bright he was or how high he rose, always on top. The person who was once called the most beautiful among the celestials started to slowly fall apart on the inside because of this truth. While there was a moment of somber silence, Lucifer looked at himself in the sea, which was reflecting the holy presence. He didn't see any problems. He shone in every way, as if glory itself came from inside him. At that very moment, something new and different grew in his mind. Silence, a thought that can't be put into a category. It had never been seen or heard before, so there were no words to describe it. A question that seemed harmless, but was as poisonous as it got. What if I didn't bow down anymore? The thought was as thin as mist, but strong enough to change who he was. The first departure was inside the company. They used to really admire each other, but now there was disagreement. This spark came up at a crucial time for everything in the world. Heaven was getting ready for a reveal that had never been made public before. In his glory, God gathered all the armies in heaven. Angels of all kinds and roles took their places. The quiet wasn't out of fear, it was out of want. There was going to be a big surprise. It was then the Most High's voice that said, "I will do something that has never been done before. I will make beings whose essence is like mine." The angels looked at each other. New living things? More heaven sent? Any more warriors? Need more messengers? "They will be made in my image," God said next, which didn't fit into any known group. Lucifer's pride was hurt very badly by this news. The angels had served, honored, and followed for a very long time. No one had ever said that they were like God. They were loyal workers and quick messengers, but they were not like God. Would beings that look and think like the Creator now come into being? Lucifer thought this was wrong. There was more. The Lord wasn't done yet. "My son will walk with them. He will be born among people. They will rule over everything through him. Hell's guard will even serve them." He kept hearing these words over and over. Not only would these new beings be important, but they would also be able to live with gods. Lucifer was angry, but he didn't say anything about it. He thought it would be embarrassing to bow down to a being made of dust. Limitless, weak, and short-lived beings would now be more important than angels. The end of time seemed to fall apart under his feet. During this speech, he felt something break inside him. He started to lose faith in the divine plan, which he had always had. He changed how he thought about God's glory. He started to feel like there was room for a different kind of rule or throne, one that he could rule himself, one where there were no lower beings treated as if they were the Most High. It wasn't anger that showed up as envy, but determination. He began to think he was right, that it was okay, that something wasn't right with this whole thing. He was supposed to be the closest, but now something that doesn't even exist yet would be closer. This made the prayer leader start to think positively about himself. And where he had given up before, he now asked questions about. He now looked at the places where he had praised. The beauty of God's plan scared him because it seemed like it could take away his power. Also, that threat had to be stopped. Lucifer then began to tell people about his worries. It's not with insults, but with some ideas. He said there was a different kind of government, that victory could be shared, that the plan might not have been so great after all. His words were soft, but they were full of doubt. And because they came from him, they were important. Some people paid attention, some people turned away, but the harm was already done. The first signs of rebellion didn't sound like a cry, but like doubt. The order in heaven was starting to break up. On the outside, though, everything still looked fine. The praise went on as the songs echoed and the angels flew around. But there was a crack in heaven's heart that no one could see, a tear that could be felt but not seen. And he was in the middle of all this stress. The person who used to be the most exact reflection of divine light now used his power to show himself. No longer did he want to praise the Eternal One. Now he wanted to take back his power. He had come to think that he deserved more than what was given to him. It wasn't just a desire. It changed how much he thought he was worth. He was tired of being a servant. He wanted to rule the world. "Why not me?" was the thought that had been a whisper before it became a scream inside him. Things that used to be getting along great were about to start fighting on a cosmic level. Because of a deep wish, even the most beautiful angels stopped seeing the light as coming from God and started seeing it as their own right. Eternity was about to see the start of the first fight. It's not for land, not for power over things, but for prayer. Also, this fight would only happen in heaven. That's where it would start. In the heart of someone who had everything at one point, but now thinks it's not enough. The words cut like blades that you can't see. Take care of them. Oh, he kept hearing that phrase over and over in his head like an insult. Who do you serve? Animals that hadn't even been shaped yet? Beings that are weak and made of dust and air? Should Lucifer, the biggest star in the sky, bow down to broken things that come from the ground? It seemed like an attack on his very life, what he did, his essence. The crowd in heaven broke out in song, honoring and celebrating the divine plan. It was like rivers of light rising from the chords. Lucifer did not sing, though. He didn't move at all. Even though his body was straight, his mind was in a mess. A storm was building inside him. The quiet roar of his soul could not be silenced by music. Like a hammer, the word "no" was said over and over. No, no, no. He was in charge of keeping the throne safe, the angel who put it on top of it, the one who walked on holy rocks, the most accurate picture of endless glory. He was the morning glow and the picture of beauty. Everything about his shape pointed to perfection. The stones that were on top of him sparkled like the chair. He had a voice that was both heavy and sweet, like thunder. How could he be lowered to taking care of dirt now? That's when everything fell apart. Something crashed very hard inside. It looked like his whole structure, which used to be as rigid as a diamond, had fallen on a sharp rock. And the sound of this breaking inside him was heard only by him. Other people couldn't hear it, but it was real, deep, and couldn't be undone. He felt something he had never felt in heaven, something hot, painful, or dangerous. It began with a spark. It turned into a flame after that. It turned into a fire quickly. For the first time he felt proud, something that made him feel both hot and full at the same time. He felt like he had been asleep his whole life and was now finally awake. Why send it? Why give up his fame to someone else? He was proud of himself when he looked at himself, his shape, his strength, his beauty, and his voice. Every single spark in his music was better, not just something to admire, but out of respect. Was he not the best, the most beautiful, the one who looked most like the light? He looked around at the band of angels who were singing passionately about God's plan. Then he realized they were stupid for the first time. He saw it as the start of their slavery, and they were celebrating it. Without a doubt, they sang with their eyes shut. In blind worship, they're like robots. At that very moment, a new thought came to mind, and the gap opened up. I could be a better leader than him. There was no longer any anger over being downgraded. It wasn't about being angry. It was about having goals, a dark, firm, and fierce belief. He didn't want to serve better any longer. He didn't want to be in charge either. He wished to be king, the one that the Most High sat on, not the one that God let him touch, not the spot to the right of glory, but the glory itself. That thought turned the poison that started as doubt into full-on poison. This new force was now driving every part of his body. It was a force that the universe had never seen before. He liked being proud of this. He liked how it made him feel to be the enemy. He could finally be the most worthy person he had always thought of himself to be. It was like all the rules had been lifted. This pride spread like ink into a clean river. Just one drop was enough to make everything dirty. Motivations that were once good became bad. When feelings were in line with divine will, they became skewed. Despite not being aware that he was falling, he went down further with each passing second. He turned around and looked around with a calm face. A smile slowly showed up, but it wasn't the same as before. It wasn't an act of happiness. It was a cover for rebellion. A smile with thought, in control. Not true, but it works. He wasn't going to yell. He wasn't going to rip his clothes. His war would start in quiet, making it look like everything was getting along. He planned while the other angels sang. While they were having fun, he made plans. He was more sure of himself. I will be the new Lord. I'm going to make a new order. A new heaven where the most beautiful people rule, where honor is shared among those who deserve it, where there are many thrones instead of one, and I will be higher than all of them. At that time, heaven was still very bright, but darkness was already coming up behind the light. Not darkness as in the lack of light, but as in the presence of evil. Now Lucifer had something that no other made being had ever had. He was willingly going against God's will. He who had been the clearest mirror of glory was now the most skewed mirror of pride. He was the one who led worship, and now he wanted prayer. The person who was protecting the present was turning against it. The worst part was that he believed he was right. The first fall had already taken place, not in the sky that we can see. But deep down, he knew that the throne wasn't enough unless it was his. He sang still. His mouth moved at the same time as the others. As always, his wings were bright. Inside, though, everything was already a mess. What used to be love was now a show. Lucifer smiled as he thought of a plan. He moved around while he planned. He took part, but all he did was show up. He no longer prayed. He was no longer in the army. He was no longer a member. It was already falling, not in front of the chair or in public, but inside himself. It spread now in silence. It was no longer possible to be perfect. The most honorable being in heaven had become the first deceiver. The person who had been shaped to show glory now twisted the truth with sweet words and dangerous plans. His plan was easy, but terrible. He didn't go after the strong, the archangels, or the praise leaders who could be seen right away. It would have been too dangerous to do that. He instead looked to the lost, those that no one praised. These people cleaned the courts of heaven. The people who watched over the silent gates for a long time without anyone noticing. The ones you can't see. He walked up to them slowly. His voice was soft and he pretended to understand. I see you. That was the beginning, but it made a big difference. You're important. I know who you are even if God doesn't say your name. Those angels, whose lives were always in line with God's plan, felt special now. Seen. Thanks. God wasn't called unfair by Lucifer. It wasn't an open accusation. He only asked questions, advice that looks like worry. If God is love, then why does he want worship? Why can't we pick our own path if we have free will? Does he have something to hide? There were a lot of doubts, like sparks in a dry field, a word here and there, a look of knowing, a head nod. There should be no yelling or straight arguments, nothing but talks, thoughts, what we think, and one line in the middle of it all. You deserve what God doesn't give you was one of 7 words that made people want to fight. When said softly and with passion, that phrase opened doors that had never been touched before. Who wouldn't want to be more, to get more, to be loved, praised, and known? That's exactly what Lucifer offered, not to force you to, but as a possible outcome, as a right. The plan was very surgical. He gave angels a mirror so they could see a better version of themselves. By complimenting someone, you planted seeds of pride, comparing small things. He didn't say rebel, he only asked things. That made people love him. Soon, secret small groups began to form, meetings in private in the halls of heaven. Comments were cut off when people who weren't wanted came up. There was a different mood among the angels, something that you can't see but can't deny. A noise in the middle of the harmony, a sickness in the ranks of light. He said there would be states. He said there would be thrones. He said freedom would come. Some people said, we'll be gods. Our own crowns and lands will be ours. It was the longest lie that was passed off as a promise of progress. Michael, the god of war, was the first to notice. His eyes were trained to pick up on chaos, and they could feel the disturbance in the air. Groups that broke up when he got there. Short breaks in conversations. They looked away from him with tense, restless looks. There was a big problem. He told Gabriel, there is a crack here. You can't see it, but the foundation is already broken. They tried to do something. Another angel was warned. They called together the faithful. They asked things. They looked for answers. It was too late, though. It was quick for Lucifer. Small, killing. He spread poison mixed with the sweetness of fake care. A lot of them already thought they were being set free, not tricked. His story made it seem like the people who stayed true were the real enemies. He said, they want to keep us small. People really like them. They're scared of losing their job. That's why they attack us. It was the exact opposite of what was true. The loyal were now seen as cruel. People who believed the lie thought they were waking up. For real, they were going blind. But they thought they could finally see. Then, the moment that was bound to happen did. The choice. Angels couldn't hide. There was no one in heaven who stayed neutral. The split tore through all time. Any spirit could choose to stay with the Creator or follow the one who promised a new order. Each person had to choose between the throne and the throne that had been taken by someone else, in the space between unchanging truth and new fiction. Before that day, heaven had never had any doubts, but at that very moment many people paused. They thought, they looked at. Even worse, some people decided to follow Lucifer, which scared the believers. 23. 3 out of every 4 angels who were made picked the way of self-exaltation, not because they were bad, but because they believed in something that was fake and ugly on the inside. They were drawn in by a talk that made them feel good about themselves, that offered power without having to give in, glory without giving up anything, no church, just worship. It was the biggest split the universe had ever seen, and it hadn't turned into war yet. But heaven was already broken. God or Satan, the source of all life, or a broken image that wanted the throne, the eternal truth, or a lie that looks like justice. 3/4 of the angels, who were made of light and purpose, looked at the Creator, who made them perfectly and kept them alive by being there, and said, "We choose another." The choice was made. There would be conflict. Lucifer didn't think twice. He walked straight to the middle of the sky like he was sure he could not be defeated. But he didn't come up to praise her. He put himself forward as a rival. It wasn't as a worker, but as a possible king. His words broke the silence like lightning on a clear night. "I will rise to great heights. I will set up my throne above the stars of God. I'm going to be like the Most High." The statement sounded like a bomb going off. Every word seemed to go against the rules that kept the world going. The peace was broken. Heaven heard the sound of breaking apart. Heaven is a place of order and beauty. There was peace for a moment, but then there was war. "For the king!" the loyal angels yelled at the same time. The forces of heaven lined up, with Michael in the lead with his sword and eyes as hot as fire. In turn, Lucifer made his own darkness. His plot to rebel took shape. He raised a dark and proud weapon and led the rebels with a war cry that looked like freedom. That was the start. It was the first war in the universe. Light versus dark, order versus chaos, servants against those who take over. There was so much fighting in the lines that it shook the sky. Things that used to praise each other were now blazing with anger at each other. Like thunder, swords of glory cut through the air. Shields of darkness took hits like abysses eating up light. Wings, which used to be a sign of dance and respect, turned into moving blades that hit with a lot of force. The noise was very loud. The sky, which was used to worship songs, was now filled with battle cries, the sound of weapons striking and pained cries. It seemed like the world was in pain, like everything was crying out because it had lost its innocence. At the center of the fight, Michael and Lucifer crashed into each other like stars. This person is protecting the endless throne from the Lord of Revolt who claims to be it. There was more than one kind of pain in their first blow to each other. Michael's justice shone like lightning that had no limits. Hell's rage burned like a star going out, and when they hit each other, there was a blast that sent energy waves through time and space. They fought like that fight was the only way to save the world, since it did. But there is one truth that will never change. No force, no matter how strong, can beat the one who made everything. Even if Lucifer became king of his own cause, he would never be bigger than the one who made him. So one by one, his friends died. It lost its shine for the rebels. The light that was around them went out. The weight of greed changed the shape of their once glorious bodies. Beauty became a mess. Oh, and Lucifer? He was finally removed from power. He fell to his knees, not with awe, but with the crushing weight of loss. His face, which used to be very beautiful, was now twisted with anger, pain, and the terrible knowledge of what he had lost. He wasn't going to take the throne. He wasn't going to be like the Most High. He was nothing but dust of pride, crushed by God's power. All of a sudden, a voice stronger than 1,000 thunderclaps rang out in heaven. "Sion!" That one word changed everything. The order was given. People who had joined the revolt then started to fall. 23. 1/3 of all the angels that were made. There were millions of beings in heaven who were made to worship, serve, and live in the sky. They were now thrown down, pushed out of the room, taken away from fame, thrown away like stars being ripped from the sky. They fell, they fell, they fell. Expulsion was something that had never happened before in all of eternity. Loss, mess, Heaven had tears for the first time, if not of water, then of light. It hurt. There was a split. People could remember what they had lost. There was no more war, but the cuts would not go away. The throne didn't move at all. No one had touched God. His full power stayed the same. Heaven was still whole, but it remembered that even in acts of light there can be shades. The rebels were not wiped out. They were taken away. They didn't go away. They just stopped belonging. These people were sent to the lower realms, away from holiness and light. For all time they fell like lightning through the void. Oh, and Lucifer, he hit the earth with force like fire falling from heaven. His name wasn't the same anymore. His shape had changed. His brightness had turned to dark. He was no longer as smart as he seemed. He was no longer the one who brought light. Against him was the enemy, who is accusing. What a snake, those who lie. After he fell, he didn't say sorry when he got up, and only hate. The first thing that makes things hateful. He wasn't done yet. The battle in heaven was over, but Satan's plans were still alive. He fell like lightning when he lost, but he got back up with new plans. He was going to destroy what God loved most if he couldn't get above God. The world was still new, and there was a garden in the middle of it. Eden. It was a place where God walked among the trees, and there was no pain, death, or fear. In that place, two beings lived in perfect harmony with God. Their new goal would be to hit them. Adam and Eve were good. They didn't know any lies. They had never been given a false promise, and they couldn't believe that someone could use words to trick them. They didn't know they were in danger and were innocent in the face of evil, like couples in love. And that was just what Satan wanted. He didn't want to make the same mistakes heaven did. He was no longer going to fight. He would now hide himself. He wouldn't fight with force. Instead, he would trick people with kindness. Before the shadows hit the ground in Eden, he was already there. He looked. He learned. He wasn't going to act quickly. He would try to convince people of things he couldn't get them to do with violence. He saw that Eve often walked by herself early in the morning. Adam was careful, but he was easily sidetracked when he had other things to do. It dawned on him that they were both drawn to the same part of the garden, the middle. Two trees grew there. One tree stood for life that never ends. The other is the line of duty, the tree that knows both good and bad. Devil would set his trap there. He changed into an attractive being, not a moving thing like he would become, but something interesting to humans. He looked interesting, moved easily, and the way his colors mixed with the light was hypnotic. It was hard not to look away. He walked up to the banned tree and waited, not moving, but didn't say anything. Up until Eve, as usual, came out of the woods, humming softly, having no idea what was coming. She stood still in front of the tree. It was a right that no one knew about. She liked it, but she never touched it. She knew what to do. She knew what to do, but she was also interested. There was something about that line that interested her. That's when the voice came in. Did God really say that? That you can't eat anything from a tree? Eve turned around confused. The thing just stared at her, not threatening her in any way, just a strange look. She wasn't sure. No, we can eat from all of them except this one. It will kill us if we eat it or touch it. Satan cocked his head as if he were thinking about something wrong. Die? Are you sure you're going to die? That's not going to happen. God knows that this fruit will open your eyes. You'll change into Him. You will know good and bad. That was it. The lie that looked like truth. Not an order, not a threat, but it was a hint that was wrapped in nice words. He didn't say that God didn't exist. He only suggested that God might be hiding something important. That there was a secret that wasn't allowed behind the rule. Eve didn't say anything. She looked at the fruit again. There was now a seed of doubt. Obedience had been easy up until that point. To me, it looked like a cap. Before, the order was to keep people safe. It looked like they were missing out now. That small change in meaning was enough to make the heart beat faster. Devil walked away slowly. He didn't need to push. The seed was getting bigger. He just had to wait. He didn't ask for anything. He just gave me an idea, and that can be more dangerous than any direct order. Eve put her hand on the fruit. The world took its first step toward breaking apart. Nothing went off. There was no noise. No voice of rebuke came from the sky. It was too quiet, and that made sense to her as proof. Soon, Adam joined in too. There wasn't any talk. There was no fight back. A simple act that will have effects that will last forever. From where he was hiding in the yard, Satan didn't shout with joy. He did nothing but watch. The plan worked out. He had lost in heaven with his yells, but he won on earth with quiet. Disobedience had come in. The world would never be the same without it. Adam and Eve felt it right away. Like mist before the sun, innocence went away. What used to be freedom is now shame. What used to be trust turned into fear. Pure hearts were filled with worry. The sound of God's footsteps used to make people happy, but now it made them shake. The fall started with an idea, and that idea turned into action. Creation, which had been living in unity up until that point, started to fall apart from the inside. Devil won the first fight on earth. He knew, though, that the war was only just starting. He didn't yell. He didn't make threats. He didn't make her. He only asked, not like a storm, but like a breeze. He spoke. Eve felt a little better after each statement. He didn't look like an enemy. He looked interested, not harmful. That was the most dangerous thing. Eve did something she had never done before when she answered. She thought about the law. She tried to explain it. She spoke with passion, as if she were defending what God told her. She said, "We can eat from all the trees, but not this one. We will die if we eat from it." The thing laughed, but not with disdain. It was a quiet laugh that was almost gentle, as if someone were to listen to a child's silly idea. Die? Did he really say that? It was a tone of surprise, not anger. It was that more than any other charge that broke Eve's heart. She stopped talking. He then used that room to drop the next trick. Want to hear a secret? Secrets are hard to avoid. People who listen to them feel like they are a part of something special that not many people know about. Eve leaned in, but she didn't know what she was doing. His words went on. God knows that the day you eat this fruit, your eyes will be opened. You'll see things the way he does. You'll understand the same way he does. You'll be like him. It was very accurate to measure each word. He didn't say that God was bad, just that he had something hidden, that there was a power that was kept secret behind a law, and that they could get this power. Adam and Eve's faces changed. There was now doubt growing like a seed. In a low voice, she said, "He forbids us," as if she had found something on her own. Satan saw it and took advantage of it. He said in a whisper, "Look closely, but look really." She kept her eyes on the fruit. It was just a limitation before. It looked like a promise now. How shiny the skin is. The form is just right. The sweet smell went with the wind. Eve didn't see a risk anymore. She saw a missed chance. She might have been being watched by someone. The snake kept talking. God has everything. He knows everything. He is in charge of everything. He keeps you here, not knowing, depending on, like having pets in a lovely yard. Do you agree with that? Since God made you in his image, don't you deserve more? Eve was unsure. She slowly raised her shaking hand. She reached for the fruit. After that, she stepped back. She put her hand on the branch. She stopped once more. She was stuck between two worlds, the one of duty and the one of potential. Then she called out, but she didn't know why. "Adam!" He showed up in the trees. It was quiet and quick when he came. He looked right at the fruit. He asked, "Did the snake talk?" "Yes." She made it happen. "I heard, though." "I've been here the whole time," he said. "I paid attention." Thoughts. They looked at each other, as if they were looking for each other in the rising chaos. After that, they looked at the fruit. They turned around and looked at each other. In the end, the choice wasn't made on the spot. It went both ways. Two hearts that were easily hurt agreed in silence. They reached out together. The fruit was easy to break. There it was, ready to be picked, like it was part of a bigger plan, not a fight. No sound from heaven could stop them. Eve was the first one to bite. then Adam. Just a small action, one option. It was the end of heaven. It wasn't taken, it was traded for. Eternity was bought for a flavor that was not known. The garden was still there, still the trees moved, but something that couldn't be seen was broken, something holy. Under the weight of sorrow, innocence broke like glass. They opened their eyes, but not how they thought it would be. Not to be proud, not to power. They let in something they had never seen before. Shame, fear, openness to harm. Things that were once beautiful looked weak now. What used to be freedom now seemed like being open. They want to hide for the first time. They ran away. They tried to hide their bodies. The leaves were sewn together. They ran into the bushes to hide. They hoped not to hear the noise. They did hear it, though. As always, God's steps were soft, steady, and comforting. Only now did the sound make me scared. God did not call them out of anger. He called in pain. "Where are you, Adam?" It wasn't a question of geography. It was about existence. The place where he had been, the place of love, trust, and community, was now empty. The new truth was shown by Adam's answer. "I heard your voice, and I was afraid." Fear had come in. They were no longer together. There was no more fall. Satan stood far away and watched in silence. He did not laugh to celebrate. He did nothing but watch. His plan worked out. The link between people and God was broken. After that, he would start writing his story among people, not as a snake, but as the one who accuses, lies, and fights against them. But the one who made everything would not leave it. There was a hope even on the first day of fall. There would be something bigger. The snake's head would be crushed. The story wasn't over yet. It was just getting started. That's exactly what Satan wanted, to cut the world off from God who made it. He had a plan, and Adam and Eve's sin was just the start of it. He had an effect that grew over the years, from Eden onward. Like a dark river rising from a secret crack, there was no longer peace where there used to be it. Once there was order, but now there was revolt. But he would never forget one thing, and it hurt him every day: the promise. "The children of the woman will crush your head," God had said, a statement that was said before everyone knew what true justice was. A kid would show up, a boy born of flesh and blood, a person who will suffer, but who will also bring healing, and this boy would kill him. At some point in history, he would be killed by a blow. Satan became crazy. Every time he heard a baby cry, he was filled with fear. Which one would be picked? Which child's voice carried the word of God? What belly held the person who would ruin his work? He saw every pregnant woman as a possible threat. Everyone in the world was carrying a promise, and he wouldn't stop until he stopped it. His first try was very bad. 2 brothers, 1 altar, 2 hearts that don't agree, Cain and Abel. God accepted Abel's sacrifice because he was honest and not proud. It was Satan who whispered in the bigger brother's ear, making him angry and jealous. "He believes he is greater than you. Why do you keep competing for heaven's attention?" Cain didn't say anything, but his hands were shaking. "His blood will make your land rich." The whisper was soft but sharp. "Get rid of him. Be the only one." This was the first time that the earth's dirt knew how to drink blood. It was time for the first murder, the first person killed. Satan was happy as he watched. Men would lose the promised lineage in their own mistakes if they could kill each other. But the promise did not die, not even when there was death. More and more babies were born. He changed his plan as a result. He would ruin people if he couldn't get rid of the bloodline. He would teach people things that not even angels wanted to know. Hidden things, knowing things that made the soul look ugly. Over the years, he has been blamed for many terrible things, including war, witchcraft, worship, and torture. They came up with new ways to hurt that not even he could have thought of. The ground was full of crime. Family units broke up. Bad things became normal. God's heart was broken. Creation, which was once called very good, was now messed up. The world had to be cleaned up. That's why the flood happened. A punishment against evil and a fresh start. Devil, though, couldn't drown. He didn't have anyone to die for. Even though the seas of judgment were all around him, he kept waiting, looking at. Noah was both a sign of hope and a danger. The family was kept safe. The promised family had lived on. People moved back to the earth after the flood. Men had more children. Satan also tried something different. He tried to control unity. Instead of using violence to spread evil, he would use pride to bring it all together. He told men they were strong enough to reach the sky on their own. Build a tower. Give yourself a name. Prove to God that you don't need him anymore. The Tower of Babel was built as a sign of pride, a city that doesn't have a divine ruler but has huge plans. It was the first time someone tried to be religious without God. The plan did not go as planned, though. God messed up the languages. The people were spread out. There were bits of truth and seeds of lies in the society of every country. For Satan, this was a blow, but it was also a chance to start over. Since the people were split up, the promise could come from anywhere. Now, surveillance had to cover the whole world. Out of all the people, one was picked. A people would come from a man who didn't have any kids but had a lot of hope, Abraham. God also made a promise through him. All the families on earth will be blessed through your children. Devil was on high alert. There was now a way to follow through on the promise. A group of people, a name. Then he tried to choke them. He made Egypt's kings mean. Pharaohs who were afraid that the Hebrews would multiply. They told them to kill the kids. They made the guys slaves. The women were smashed. If the promised child was still to come, he would not be able to get out of the fire of evil. But he failed. Moses made it. Hope also lived because of him. When he couldn't stop the birth, he tried to make things bad inside the family. He got the Israelites to follow other gods. He started groups that were not holy, sacrificing people, prostitution for a ritual. Prophets were killed, real altars were taken down. A lot of houses had forgotten the name of the living God. But there was always a trace of it, a small group of faithful people who were waiting for the promised one to come. Satan went after the bloodline for hundreds of years. He went after kings, killed children, and made people betray others. He cut the thread of promise with any tool, from Saul to Herod to Jezebel to Nebuchadnezzar. The thread didn't break, though. It got thinner at times. It looked like it was going to be lost sometimes, but God kept it safe. Then the time came. In a town that history has forgotten, in a part of the world's most powerful kingdom that no one remembers. The message came from a young virgin born into a group of downtrodden people. You will get pregnant and have a son. Satan was shaking. The plan was coming together. The forecast would come true. The person who would come as a helper would count down the days of the snake that tricked people in the yard. He didn't give up, though. Time was still there. There was still war. And everyone in the world was about to see the most epic battle ever. Satan still tried to stop it. He saw yet another threat when the Hebrews started to grow in number in Egypt. A group of people who are growing too quickly. A group of people who kept old promises. He told Pharaoh in his heart, they will rebel. They are going to take your throne. Fear turned into order. The order turned into tragedy. Get rid of all the boys. Put them in the water. A huge number of babies were taken from their mothers' arms and thrown into the Nile. Through the empire's streets, the cries of families could be heard. Devil looked on, sure that he had won again. But one baby got away. One basket. There is one thread of hope in the water, Moses, raised in the palace of the enemy, fed by the house that ruled over his people and hurt them. They were freed by God at the right time because of him. The dream was still alive once more. But evil didn't stop. If he couldn't stop it, he tried to scare them. He made people afraid with giants. He crushed the faithful with leaders who were not good. He made people wonder. He blew up vanity mirrors. He made the people who carried the promise more likely to sin. When young, weak, and unlikely David showed up, Satan kept a close eye on him. He knew that the descendant that the prophets had talked about would come from him. He tried to hurt him from the inside. It was like he threw poison into his heart. David had to give in to his greed, lies, and killings, but David changed his mind, which is something Satan would never do. He fell, but he got back up. He broke, but he didn't run away from what was going on. The throne of hope was still there. Over the years, the predictions became clearer in what they meant. Bethlehem, no one else. Kids, the name is Emmanuel. Hope was no longer a vague idea. The enemy could feel the attack getting stronger. It was no longer enough to hurt the people. He now had to stop a certain woman, a certain place, or a certain time in history. Then night came. There was no noise, no army, and no thunder. The sky slowly opened up over the fields. A group of farmers heard the message. Someone had a child. It wasn't just any kid, though. It was he, making good on the word. The person who would hit the snake in the head, the Most High's son. Devil tried to stop it. He had Herod kill all the boys in Bethlehem. At least one more time, innocent blood was on the ground. One more time, mums cried. It wasn't enough, though. The boy got away. He became an adult. He soon started to teach, to get better, to fix up, to deal with. He didn't have a crown with him. He walked in with a towel around his shoulders. He didn't sit on Caesar's chair. He sat at the table with poor people. He didn't ask for praise. He gave it. Soldiers didn't come to carry him. He came to carry the cross. That's what made Satan crazy. He was ready for war, but all he got was quiet. He was ready for fire, but instead found kindness. He thought the king would be damaging, but all he saw was a broken man hanging from a tree. He thought he had won on the cross. Finally, the promised child was now bloody and hanging between heaven and earth by himself. His own people turned away from him. The followers ran away. The body hit the ground. The stone then closed the tomb. But Satan forgot one thing. God always wins. The sky shook on the third day. There was nothing in the tomb. Death has been beaten. Hell was no longer in charge. Christ rose from the dead, but this time as king, not as a hunter. Not with scars from loss, but with signs of success. It had been kept the word. The snake's head was broken off. So today we have hope, even when the world screams, when fear tries to choke us, and when it seems like everything is lost. Since the worst enemy has already been beaten, devil has already lost. Since Eden, his end has been planned. And there is nothing that can change that. Every tear you shed, every single moment of being alone, every hurt you feel, these things are not the end, because there is a name that has made it through everything. A name that means love, power, and control all at the same time. Christ. He won for more than just himself. He won for us. Besides that, he said he would come back. They will no longer be helpless babies when he comes. It won't be like a quiet carpenter anymore. He's going to come as king, with honor for the truth, with strength that no shadow can handle. The most unexpected thing is that he won't be coming by himself. He will rule with those who picked him, the weak ones who believed, the tired ones who gave up, the bad people who were made clean. That's not what he wants. He's looking for people who say, "Yes, I need you," and you are part of that. The choice is still open. The same one Eve and Adam had to deal with. The same one Cain turned down, the same one David agreed to. The old lie that you don't need God is on one side. You can be the center, that you don't have to bow down to anyone to get what you want. On the other hand, the eternal truth is that we can only have real life when we give up everything and trust the one who did everything for us. So friend, take a moment to really think. Which side will you be on when the sky opens up and the king comes back? That day will come. It won't matter how much money you had, how many fans you had, or what people thought of you when it happens. The only thing that will count is whether you pick the king. Do you know someone who needs to be told that Jesus rules and evil has already been defeated? Share this story with them. When the heavens open, I want to be with the king, right in the space below. Stay with us on our channel and like this movie. There are still many stories to come. Thank you for following us to the end of this incredible story. See you in the next video. May God be with you always. Amen.